Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Panarski, and I'm a Communications Officer with the City of Kingston. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon for a neighborhood meeting about 805 Ridley Drive. We are now live streaming today's neighborhood meeting on the City of Kingston YouTube channel if you would like to join us there as well. We have 8 people who have registered to join us this afternoon. We just have a couple more that will be joining us. Just going to give them another minute to get connected and join us in this webinar. Thank you again for spending some time with us this afternoon. Hi, everyone. So we're going to get started. Everyone who registered to join us today is now with us here at the neighborhood meeting about 805 Ridley Drive. My name is Jen Panarski, and I'm a communications officer with the City of Kingston. Just going to go over a couple of housekeeping items so that we make the most of our time together during the session. So today's meeting is live streamed, closed captioned, and will be recorded to YouTube so you can watch it afterwards. And anybody who's joining us from the community, just to let you know that your video and your microphones are turned off to protect your privacy. So I have some technical troubleshooting tips for you. I just received a heads up from our IT support here at the city that my own screen sharing is a little wonky right now, so bear with us. For anybody who's joining us through Zoom, here's some technology troubleshooting tips for you. So we will be having, if you have any Zoom questions, you can ask a question specifically in the chat, and that's at the bottom of your screen. On Zoom and on Get Involved Kingston, there are resources that help you adjust your audio and your screen size if needed. If you get disconnected from the internet and you would like to call in to continue to participate, please call in by dialing 1-647-558-0588 and use the webinar ID 952-6130-7608. And we are live streaming on YouTube, and our channel is the City of Kingston. We will also have a scheduled Q&A portion of this neighborhood meeting. There's a couple of ways that you can offer feedback and leave some comments or questions for everybody. So the primary way that we're hoping that you're able to participate is by asking a question in writing, and you can do that by typing in the Q&A area. Just keep in mind that your name and your question will be visible to participants, and then we'll read it out loud so that everyone can hear and respond. You can ask a question verbally as well. You do that by clicking the raise hand function, and we will turn on your microphone. And if you're dialing in by phone, please press *9, and you will raise your hand that way and we will turn on your microphone. If you've joined us for an online public engagement session before, if you joined us in person before we moved online, we do have some guidelines for participation, and this helps us have a safe and welcoming environment for everyone. I'm going to give you a moment to review these guidelines for participation. If you have any questions or concerns about the guidelines, please use the raise hand and we'll be able to address them for you. Okay, seeing no concerns or objections with the guidelines for participation, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce now. And thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Bruce, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment so I can sort out what's going on with my presentation. But thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Jen. And how's my audio?
Your audio is great, Bruce. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And welcome, everyone. My name is Bruce Davis. I'm your host and facilitator this afternoon. I'm a consultant working with the City of Kingston to assist with community engagement. And I'm going to be facilitating this online session. If you're participating through your computer, you will be able to speak and type questions. We've explained that, and there's more instructions that we'll put back up on the screen. If you're on your phone, I see we have one person on your phone, you will be able to ask a question when we get to that part of the session. You can also follow today's online meeting through the City of Kingston's live YouTube feed, which will be posted on the city's public engagement website after the meeting. The land we're discussing today on Ridley Street is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples, and this area is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The purpose of today's session is to provide information to members of the community, the neighborhood really, regarding the Kingston Youth Shelter moving to 805 Ridley Street. We're here to share information, but also to hear from you and to answer as many questions as possible. This is the first of a series of community efforts that we're going to make to maintain lines of communication between the community and the Kingston Youth Shelter. We've assembled a panel that'll be providing information. And as I think you've heard, we're recording today's session. So if you have neighbors who haven't been able to log in or who are not able to make this time, please make sure that they know about that recording. My technical co-host obviously is Jen, and she's going to make sure that the Zoom technology works and she'll keep the slides moving. In terms of the agenda, we've got about 20 minutes of presentation, and then we're going to open the floor to you to get your feedback, your comments and questions. And we will explain to you again how you raise your hand or how you can type into the question box that's there, and we will try and get through all the questions today. We're not pre-screening the calls or questions. They come in from the top. We'll just work our way down the list so everyone will get a chance to speak. As with any public meeting I facilitate, I always like to remind participants to keep their comments concise, constructive, and considerate of other views. The shorter the question or comment, obviously, the more people will get to speak. I think we have about 15 people who are on the line now, so hopefully we'll get through everyone today. And I know that many people have strong views about the Kingston Youth Shelter coming to Ridley Street, pro and con. I've seen some of the online comments, but I just ask people to be considerate and not to use language that will further victimize the people we're trying to support through this initiative, or to use hurtful or hateful language. Those are kind of the ground rules. If you're just joining, my name is Bruce Davis, and I'm your host and facilitator for this afternoon's session. I'm a consultant working with the City of Kingston to assist with community engagement, and I'll be facilitating this online session. I'm going to get Jen to bring that agenda slide back up, if you could just do that. Our panel for this afternoon's session includes several key individuals. Mitchell Grange is the City of Kingston's Manager of Housing and Homelessness, and he's joined by his colleague Joanne Boris, who's the Housing Program Administrator. Ruth Woodman is the Executive Director of the Kingston Youth Shelter, and she's joined by her colleague Catherine Oxford, the Shelter Manager. I should mention that Councillor Robert Kiley is on the call this afternoon. Welcome, Councillor. And we're going to ask you to bring greetings and kick things off at the start. And then at the end of the session, we'll bring you back in, Councillor Kiley, if that's okay, just to summarize and give us your feedback at the end of the meeting, if that's okay. So let's get things underway. Councillor Kiley, I'm just going to turn things over to you so you can welcome people and thank them for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Terrific introduction, very clear, which I appreciate, and I hope everyone does as well. I also just want to thank staff for arranging this time together. I think that it's incredibly important that we have a chance to connect, even if we're doing it virtually and we'd much prefer to be in person. This is really a terrific initiative, so thanks to staff for doing that. And most importantly, I'm very pleased to formally welcome the Kingston Youth Shelter to Trillium District. So to Ruth and the staff and any of your clients who are joining us today, a heartfelt welcome. We're very glad that you're here, happy that you're in the neighborhood, and I hope that you enjoy the amenities that are around you. I know that I've read comments in the media that that's already looking good, but as you've seen, it's a very walkable community. You can get to parks and bus routes, shopping, and when it's safe to open, the library is just around the corner. So again, we're really glad that you're here. And I'm also glad that other residents have taken the opportunity to join in the conversation. And like Bruce said, I'm looking forward to a respectful question and answer period and getting some information sorted out, sure, but all in the spirit of supporting those that need the support. So thanks for the opportunity and for inviting me to be here.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We're going to get things started. We're going to go first to the City of Kingston. I see on the slide here, it actually says Ruth Nordgraf, the director, is speaking, but we've actually brought in Mitch Grange and Joanne Boris, who are staff with the Housing and Social Services Department, really to give us an overview of the housing needs, how and why the youth shelter was moved to 805 Ridley, and a little bit of the city's plans for that site. So Mitchell, I'm going to bring you in first if you want to get things kicked off here. Mitch?
Sure, thanks, Bruce. And hello everyone on the call. Just a bit of background to what Bruce had mentioned, how we have come to the place we're at today. Certainly last year, in response to the early response to the pandemic, the city and our service providers looked at the congregate living settings of our shelters and realized that we needed to find a different space for the clients to have proper physical distancing while they access shelter. So back in the spring of 2020, we worked with our real estate team department in the city and found we leased the facility at 670 McLean Court, 805 Ridley Drive, as well as 113 Lower Union. 670 McLean Court was for our adults shelter. 113 Lower Union was for the youth shelter. And you recall, as being members of the neighborhood, the 805 Ridley Drive was actually set up for a self-isolation center for any individual experiencing homelessness. Over time, we realized that the size of the scale of the facility was too large for the need of the clients we were serving. So we actually moved the isolation center to an alternate location, whereas it's since sat vacant. Down the road, the city looked at acquiring 805 Ridley Drive as well as 113 Lower Union for the purposes of long-term use of supportive or transitional housing. So with all that in mind, as the pandemic has continued to go on, we've realized that we will put the requests for proposals for some of the sites on hold while we allow the youth shelter to continue to use the space for for physical distancing. So having said that, the youth shelter have been at 113 Lower Union for quite some time. The city does require that space now in order to start some required capital work on the space. It did offer a capacity of 17 beds for the youth shelter. And looking at using the west wing of 805 Ridley Drive, we spoke with the youth shelter and had some discussions, and the partnership was there to transfer the service to 805 Ridley Drive, still allowing 17 bed capacity. This is a temporary solution until the pandemic kind of normalizes, at which point the city will continue to proceed with its open procurement process for longer term use of the space to support supportive and transitional transitional housing. Thanks, Bruce. Bruce, you're on mute.
Hi, Bruce, it's Jen. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Mitch, I just wanted to mention that your voice sometimes gets a little wobbly. So if it goes really wobbly, I may ask you to turn off your video, but we'll come back to you on that. So we're going to go next to Ruth Woodman, who's the Executive Director of the Kingston Youth Shelter. Ruth, welcome to the neighborhood. And maybe if you could just kick things off a little bit about background on the youth shelter, operations, how it works. You're obviously new to the neighborhood and everyone's very keen to find out more.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Yes, we're really, really excited to be at 805 Ridley with all of the space. I'll just start off with a little bit of background if people are interested. Actually, the Kingston Youth Shelter is in its 22nd year of operation. I can't believe I'm saying that. We started off many years ago downtown. The sisters at Hotel Dieu, there was a social planning council that actually helped establish our original site location at 234 Brock Street. They were noticing many of the youth were sleeping in, this is back in the 90s, were sleeping in parking garages, in alleyways and whatnot. So the sisters were gracious enough, because they own actually the building at 234 Brock, to start to have some hours where youth could actually come in. It grew and grew and grew to the point where it was just a few hours a day. A lot of volunteers helped to start the shelter. And then it went to where we were just before the pandemic hit with 24-hour operations. We also, I don't think a lot of people know much about the youth shelter. We also have 2 transitional homes. One is on Yonge Street, and youth can stay up there up to 2 years. We have a transitional home on Yonge Street and one on Elmwood. The one on Yonge Street is for individuals 16 to 24. And the one at Elmwood was from a gracious donation from Britt Smith, who a lot of you know from Homestead Land Holdings, that is specifically for 16 to 19-year-olds. We also have 2 staff members that work full-time. We're very proud. The United Way sponsored us with a pilot project about 4 years ago now. So we have a family mediator that does everything that they can to divert from youth being homeless. So I don't know if you're aware, but the majority of why youth are homeless, I get asked this every day, is because of family conflict. So we're really blessed to have a staff member on site now that can actually go out to homes and try to divert that process. We also have a prevention diversion worker that is totally funded by the City of Kingston, and they work tirelessly to try to find appropriate housing for the youth to move on, to have their own room, their own bachelor apartment. But as you know, Kingston has a very low vacancy rate, so it's quite a struggle sometimes. So that's sort of just a quick snapshot background, and thank you so much for having us today, Bruce.
Ruth, thank you very much for that. And I know we're going to have questions and answers. We'll be able to drill down quite a bit deeper, and just in terms of how you operate and the kind of things that people expect in the neighborhood. So we want to leave some of that for the conversation. Was your colleague Catherine going to jump in, or do you want to go straight to questions? Ruth, are you ready for that segment?
Catherine, do you have anything to add?
Welcome, Catherine. You're on mute still.
Thank you for that. No, I don't really have anything to add. Ruth has done a wonderful job kind of, reviewing our history. I would just emphasize that, that our youth and our staff are both passionate and wonderful people, and you know, our ultimate goal is trying to stabilize them and help them in all their different needs that they come to us for.
Super, thank you very much. So now on to questions and comments. If you're just joining us, my name is Bruce Davis, and I'm your host and facilitator for this session. I'm a consultant working with the City of Kingston to assist with community engagement, and I'm going to be moderating the questions and answers in the comments section. So we're just going to put up on the screen again, if we could, Jen, the slide explaining how people can participate. So you can put your hand up. Technically, you can put your hand up using the hand up, raise hand button, and then I'll just run down the list of folks and we'll come to you. And I'm just going to mention your first name. I won't mention your entire name, and then we'll open up your microphone. If you are calling in from your phone and you'd like to ask a question, I believe you hit *9, and then we can open up your microphone. So I think I have all of the technical pieces right. And Jen, please make sure that if I don't have it right, then we get that sorted out. So let's go to, does anyone have questions? I see we have about 20 people on the line, which is really, really great for the neighborhood. I see John is here. So let's open up the microphone for John. Go ahead, John. Let me see if I've got this right. Can we open up John's microphone? There you go. John, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that this is a very good program that you have, but you're in a residential area here. And some of the problems that we've had just in the last week, your contestant, your patients are sleeping out on the lawn in noon. They're cursing, they're smoking. They've taken over our little neighborhood park. There was 5 there at 3:30 today, so the younger children can't use it. You've had people on top of the roof at 10 o'clock at night running across the roof, for God's sakes. Last night, there was somebody taken out on a stretcher at 10:30. There's a guy that got mad and smashed a glass on the driveway. My question is this going to be permanent or is this temporary? Because if it's permanent, then we're going to have to take legal action against the city in a class action suit because the value of our homes is decreased.
Well, let me just pause you there. You've raised a couple of things. Let's try and break that apart and get to, I think, what you want to be the answer. On the first question of, is this a temporary use or will this be here forever? Can we just turn to our folks from the city? And Mitchell, can you just give John and his neighbors an idea? Is this weeks, months, years, decades? How long? What's the anticipated time frame for this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Anticipated timelines would be, at this point, it's tough to put a timeline on it until the pandemic begins to allow the services to kind of normalize and get back to, maybe it's working with public health where capacity at shelters and congregate setting are able to be increased again. It's still, there are unknowns due to the pandemic, which is difficult to put a timeline on this. Certainly until things normalize, the youth shelter will be residing at 805 Ridley Drive. In terms of permanent occupant for the space, the city did have and does currently have actually an open RFP process for the long-term operations for the space. That has been placed on hold due to the pandemic. So once things again begin to normalize, the RFP process can continue, at which point we will be entertaining proposals for longer term use of the site, which would support the creation of more affordable housing through supportive and/or transitional housing at that location.
Okay, thanks for that. We're going to come back to John, but there were a couple of other things that he raised. One, and Ruth, I'm going to come to you on this, or Catherine. Two pieces of it, on site, actually on the property, this gentleman has seen somebody up on the roof. That's clearly not acceptable. So what should someone do when and if they see something like that that's not acceptable? And the second question is, there will be kids around the property. This is their home, at least in the short term. They'll be out and about on the property. Some of that is just, the fact of life. But if they see someone up on the roof or something inappropriate like that, what should they do? Second question was, the adjacent properties or the nearby park, or parks are open to everybody. Parks are available to everybody. If there's some kind of antisocial behavior or some kind of thing that they're concerned about, how would they address that? Let's go first to the issue of something like somebody running across the roof. What should a neighbor do when and if they see that? Ruth, what's your suggestion?
Certainly, in terms of contacting the shelter, myself or Catherine, we're pretty well available, aren't we, Catherine? 24 hours a day. So by all means, and with reference to that, that's exactly what happened. I had an email, Catherine and I received an email, and both Catherine and I responded within 5 minutes, Catherine, I think. So no, that's not acceptable, and we need to know, obviously. So.
Well, just to maybe go off of that, Ruth. So we do have guidelines and expectations that all the youth are expected to follow. And so, part of this experience has also been, just getting used to their space as well. So I think there's, a little bit of testing going on and what have you. I can reassure that conversations have been had. We have enforced some stricter guidelines, and at times when deemed necessary, there are consequences to those. So we do see and definitely appreciate the community. We have had, I've had a person from the community contact us in a very nice manner, just to make us aware, and we were able to solve another issue. So that was very helpful.
Thank you for that. And a couple of things I want to point out here. One is, when and if you're writing into Ruth or Catherine, if you see something, it's really important that it's something that you see, not that you've heard or some rumor of. Yeah, I think it's really needs to be something that we actually know, or that. Second is, if you can say the day and the time of day, that also helps, because then they'll know who was on that shift. There are staff there 24 hours a day, but it's also helpful to know it was Thursday morning at about 10. That way they can go right back to their logbook and figure out what was going on. The more specific, the better. John, don't start a lawsuit yet. Let's really try and build relationships here and see how this goes. And do you have another question, John, or should I go on to another person?
Well, is there any outdoor security that goes along with this program?
Ruth, the question of security, is there outdoor security? I know you have staff on 24 hours a day, but can you just speak to that issue?
No, we have, as Bruce mentioned, we have 2 staff on. They're all working 8-hour shifts. There's 2 on at all times, but we don't have specific security for that site. Outdoor security, I should say.
Well,
and when and if, I'm going to just pause there. When and if there are issues, we don't anticipate them, but if for heaven forbid there should be a real emergency, like a real world emergency, medical emergency, or some kind of other criminal activity, of course, you would just go straight to 911. But if there's something that you think that's odd or untoward, or you're concerned about, then you can go through the email or phone. And actually, Jen, we have a slide. I'm just wondering if we could jump to that slide now, because somebody's put it in the question box. There is a slide that has the email addresses and the phone number. So we're skipping ahead a little bit. Okay, so these are the easiest ways to get a hold of. Now, Ruth, is that the best phone number? I pulled that one together. Is that the best phone number for people to use?
Yes, that's directly the 805 Ridley number. And we're just setting up the voicemail, just like literally in the next 24 hours.
Great. Thank you very much for that, John. And I'm going to go to a question in the question box, if that's okay. So let's go. There's a question from Elizabeth. I'd like to know, Ridley Shelter, are residents allowed to be there 24 hours a day? And how long realistically will a youth stay there? Like, is this something they stay for 2 days, or is this something they stay for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? How long will they stay?
This is a question I could answer if you want, Ruth.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. So it really varies in duration based on the needs. So, and the circumstances of the person that we're trying to support. So it can be an emergency situation overnight, and we find some different alternatives. It might be extended family, etc. Or it could be a longer term process where we're actually looking at different housing options and providing them with tools. So whether that be moving into our transition homes and learning independent living skills. So it really varies based on need of every individual, and it's all individualized programming.
Okay, thank you very much for that. One suggestion that came in through the question and answer box was, or the chat box, can we set up a designated smoking area so that, you know, people have an area to congregate. I don't know if that would be in the front or the back, but to have a designated smoking area with ashtrays so folks are not milling around into the parking lot. That was the suggestion. Thank you for that one. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, we do have, it's been put in an ashtray, like a tall, large ashtray at the front of the building that we are saying for the residents to use and to try not to clutter the parking lot, etc.
Another question here, or a comment from Carly. I think that's how you pronounce it. What kind of donations do you need, or do the youth need? Clothes, furniture, toiletries? What can we do specifically? What can we donate that would be helpful?
This
No,
always warms my heart, Bruce, to be honest. This is what keeps me going. It's the donations from the community that do look after our kids. I always make a joke, if we could have a cow. We go through so much milk and bread and the staples, but any food, any clothing, a lot of the youth come literally with just a backpack. And so we're open to any donations whatsoever. And it's so wonderful that somebody asked that. So anything at all. The youth just love it. For example, we have a baking club from Strathcona Park, and it's seniors, and they bake for us every third Friday, right, Catherine?
Yes.
And the kids just love it. Like, they look forward to that day. So anything at all. We welcome donations at any time.
Let me help out a little bit. The rule of thumb always, you want to make sure that whatever people are donating is good quality, right? Because we want to make sure that it's something that would be good enough that you would want your own kids or your nieces and nephews to have. And these are young adults, and so it would not be children's sizes. It's really for young adults sizes and up, presumably.
Cool.
Is that a fair way of putting it? I know you want to take everything, but I know sometimes you end up with things that then you have to figure out what to do with them.
Yeah, and I would just say sometimes people are thinking kind of larger items, and also thinking just the smaller basic needs, socks, those sorts of things, shoes. Sometimes, our youth don't even have shoes at times. So just basic needs. It doesn't have to be necessarily expensive items. We're very thankful for anything, as the youth are.
And if people don't know, they can always email you and say, oh, by the way, I'm about to go out and get something at Costco. Can I? And you can email those email addresses that we've got, and I'm sure Ruth and Catherine will get back to you. We have another question here from Tyson. Do the residents have a curfew when they're staying at the shelter? How does that work?
Do you want me to take that, Ruth?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, they do have a curfew. It is an older population of young people, so they need to be in by midnight. The bed needs to be reserved every day. So if they leave the next morning, then they need to let us know if they need their spot reserved. Otherwise, they do have the freedom to come and go. They check in with us, but they are to be secure and in their rooms by midnight.
And let me, while I've got you on that, what about overnight guests? Can shelter residents have a friend stay over, or how do you control people just wandering in and out of the building?
No, it really is an emergency service. Our transition homes are a little bit different. So there's a little more flexibility in those programs, but our youth shelter is emergency only. We do have some residents that are with us for a lengthy duration, just based on not having the availability or options to do otherwise. But no guests.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We have a question from Anna, but I'm just going to remind people, if you have a question you'd like to ask, you can either type it into the Q&A question answer box, or you can raise your hand. There's that raise hand signal. And it's really important that we hear from you. We'd rather, if you have something to say, we'd rather you say it here and we are able to talk about it, rather than not say it and then go online somewhere to some Facebook post and just start talking on, we've got the experts here, so let's ask them while we've got them. Anna has a question, or a comment. We live across the street and we're concerned about noise levels in the evening. And I think we had this, actually somebody emailed in the other day about people driving in with their cars and the music blaring and so on and so forth. But people sitting on the side porch of the shelter, playing music from their phones, drinking, yelling. Is there someone there on staff who will be looking after them and intervening when and if that happens? Obviously, we want these young people to be good neighbors, right? They're in the neighborhood. We want them to be good neighbors. So how would you recommend when that happens, say 10 o'clock at night and a bunch of folks are sitting out in the parking lot? How do you want that handled? And how do you say, what's the best way to deal with that issue? Let's go to Ruth or Catherine on that.
Yeah, so definitely we would appreciate, as you know, we are two staff models. So sometimes depending upon the situation or the shift, it can become very chaotic and hectic at times for staff. And so I have asked staff to do checks outside. Sometimes it's very difficult to do so. We would definitely appreciate being notified by the means that we've already said before. And then we absolutely will guide them to either turn down their music or whatever the issue is.
Thank you for that. I just want to caution folks. I'm just trying to make sure that we're all good neighbors on both sides. It isn't prudent. It's probably not a good idea to come over to the site to intervene or in any way, shape, or form, or to take photos. It's just not safe. It's not safe for the residents, and it's probably not a good neighborly thing. We don't want to get into altercations. Sometimes things do happen, and it's really good if you could phone or email and reach out to the staff at the site. I think that's probably a prudent way to approach it, as opposed to coming over. And I know we've already had a couple of cases where people actually came over and gave an earful to somebody. It's just probably not a good way to start that relationship. So we want to make sure we get it right, but we also want to start off on the right foot too. So So just be cautious about that. And these are, for the most part, young people, young adults. They're leaving precarious and difficult family situations, and sometimes trauma and violent situations. We should not be taking photos and sharing photos of these residents. This is their home, right? So, or at least for the short term. Any other questions? Let's go to the group and see if we have. I think we're just running through a lot of good things here. I'm going to pause and just see.
Hi,
There are
Bruce.
questions
It's
here.
Jen. I was going to say there is a comment from Jordan in the chat. I'm wondering, Jordan has fairly long comments. I wonder if he would feel comfortable, if they would feel comfortable, having a conversation rather than just in the chat. Okay, so, and I'm just paraphrasing here. Jordan's question was, or comment was about some of the activity that's going on at the corner of North, like there's I guess a small parkette or a bench, and some of the teenagers are hanging out there and they're not social distancing. And so the question was, is this something really that they should be, is there an area on site on the property where they could maybe have an area space to hang out as opposed to not hanging out at the park, because that might interact or interfere with other park users, but especially if they're not social distancing. Anyway, I'm paraphrasing, but I think that was the kind of the gist of it, is how do we coach these young adults to maintain COVID safe conditions and not engage in antisocial behavior in a park if there are other members of the public there. Any thoughts in terms of, so we're not talking about actually on the property, but an adjacent neighborhood park, or any thoughts on how we should be maybe coaching kids about, especially this COVID safe social distancing things?
Yes. So actually I can speak to this. So we have actually just recently had conversations with the clients. Our backyard, we have social distance and raised the number. At first we were only allowing one, but we've seen that the space is a fairly large space, and just to actually try to have them remain more so on our property, we've designated 3 areas so the folks can go out on our own property. We have been discouraging them from going to the park area that you're speaking about. I know at times residents are asked to just take some space and time when they need to. And so they kind of go near that area, maybe some of the reasons. So we're just suggesting that they go for a bit of a longer walk and further away. So we've had those conversations and we will continue to have them.
But we want to be clear, parks are available for everyone. It's not just for people who live in the apartment building or people who are walking their dogs. These are parks, these are public spaces that everyone can and should be able to enjoy safely. Any other questions? Let's go to our members of the neighborhood. I think we have about 20 people. Many have had their questions answered. We have 3 people who phoned in on their phone. And if you would like to ask a question, if you're on your phone, I think you hit *9. That way we'll see your hand go up. Okay, I have someone. It looks like your first 3 digits are 449. So we're going to open up your microphone. If we can just open up that. Go ahead. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I was wondering. Okay. Hi, my name is Mike, and I live directly across the street. Well, first of all, I was probably one of the people that spoke to one of the staff members. My issue, main concern, is I have a 7-year-old who, as we all know, is in lockdown. So the only place that we can go is the park. And I get it. Park is for everybody. I understand that. But already within a week, they found a ball just laying there for the kids to play with. Okay. So I went and asked the kids that were outside, and sure enough, it was one of theirs. I get it. These are teenagers, they need help, but they also need to understand that where they are is where they are. And by the way, people driving in their cars at 10 o'clock, it's not 10 o'clock, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, screeching their tires and blaring the music. So I don't know about this curfew, but it's not being enforced. So we'll start with that.
Okay, a couple of good questions there. So on the issue of residents, young adults from the Kingston Youth Shelter hanging out in the neighborhood park and smoking dope or whatever. I don't know what else is going on over there, but this is obviously a concern to a father of young children. Any suggestions in terms of how we manage behavior or set expectations? Any suggestions for us there? Ruth and Catherine, I know you are professionals at dealing with young adults.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess first and foremost, definitely I would suggest having a conversation. Our young people, generally on a whole, I know actually a couple of the community neighborhood persons have actually spoken to a resident, and they can be very lovely individuals. And I feel like if we take an opportunity such as the example you've given and make it an educational experience for all parties, for also
Catherine, I'm not sure if we've lost your audio there. Hello? Hello, is it just me?
Hi, Bruce. It's Jen. It does sound like we've lost Catherine's audio.
in communities,
Yeah,
etc.
she's gone.
Oh, Catherine.
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
Catherine. It's Jen from the city. We lost about the last 15, 25 seconds. Your audio dropped out. Can you back up a little bit and repeat?
Yeah, I was just saying that my suggestion would be just overall making it an educational experience for everybody, both for the young person resident in our care, but also for the parent's younger child. And I feel like I know the conversations that staff have with our residents and myself, really, 95%, they really want to be liked by everyone and do the right thing. I think that it would go a long way. I definitely know it would be better than trying to do the hard route. They're very used to being shunned, yelled at, and disrespected, to be honest. So that would be my suggestion. We definitely continue to have conversations with them just around kind of different community expectations and values that we have. So just to try to reiterate those with the young people.
Second half of what was raised there is the issue of people coming in, 2, 3 in the morning with loud blaring music, cars rolling in and out of that parking lot. Is that something, obviously, there shouldn't be guests on the property at that time, but there could be residents of the youth shelter who are being dropped off, or hopefully they're, that's the extent of it. But any suggestions? I'm not sure how many, if any of these residents, youth have cars. I wouldn't expect they have cars. So it's probably
He's a
not
resident.
it's not one of your
He's a
residents.
resident. He's there every day. He has a very distinctive car, and he's there every day. And he was driving in pretty crazy, like I said, 2 o'clock in the morning the other day. I unfortunately don't sleep.
Right. Let me just pause you there. Do our Ruth, Catherine, do our youth shelter residents, do they have cars?
I'm sorry. I'm a little bit dumbfounded with this. No, I'm not aware of any of our residents having a vehicle. I do know a boyfriend has dropped off a resident. but.
Okay,
other
but this
than-
is worth, obviously this is worth
Okay.
monitoring. We want to
Yeah.
make sure that these kids are safe, and we don't want other people just, predators or other folks taking advantage of the residents who are there, right? So this is something, and we very much appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We're going to have to monitor that. That
Yeah.
sounds
I can
like-
tell you, so I'll just tell you right now, it's a white Hyundai with a big Hyundai sticker on the front windshield. It's there every day.
Okay, I will definitely write that down and look into that further. Thank you.
And it may be
It may
something
be a
that
young male.
I'm going to make a suggestion that rather than disclosing any private information in this call, that maybe you can actually connect directly with Catherine with any particulars. I don't want to be, I'm hoping that people wouldn't be disclosing private details in this public forum, but that might be the way to do it so we can follow up. We certainly don't want anyone coming and going, taking advantage of the youth who are there, predators or predatory behavior if somebody's involved in some way, shape, or form. So let's get that information over to Catherine and Ruth so they can take that down. Any other thing before we go on? This gentleman, I don't have your name. It's 449. That's
Yeah,
what I've got.
Yeah, it's Mike.
Mike, any other suggestions?
Yeah.
For us, Mike?
Just a couple quick things because I actually do have to go back to work. I also work from home. I was going to say, so you mentioned security earlier, and funny enough, while on this call, commissioners was here, which they do usually once a day or more, and leave again. So is this one of their sites?
So let's go to Mitch on this question. The issue of the Kingston Youth Shelter does not actually have security staff there, but I want to just check with Mitch Grange at the City of Kingston Housing Department whether or not the City Facilities Department or some other department might have security checking on the real estate, which is a separate function. Mitch, do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Bruce. It's been set up through facilities, just an ongoing monitoring facility. It was mainly due to the point that the facility was vacant, and for insurance purposes, it was monitored by the commissioners. So I'm not quite sure if that will continue.
So that was a good catch, Mike. And that's the answer. It's a real estate function, not the Kingston Youth Shelter. And by the way, people know, you probably know that in half of the building, there was water damage. In the, I guess, the east wing of the building, there was water damage, and there's some major retrofits going on, some repairs and rehabilitation going on in the east side. And the youth shelter is taking up the western wing, I guess that's what we call it. And so that whole idea of what's going to happen with the east wing, how this is going to be done, and how the repairs are being done, that'll take some time anyway. But so people in the neighborhood, I've seen some of this online. People are asking, is this even fit for occupancy? Well, yes, the fire department and building department have signed off on occupancy. So all of that's above board. On the east side, it's been stripped back and there's repairs and maintenance were done right there. So the east side is not occupied at all. Okay, any other questions? I want to take advantage of the fact that we've got these folks here, and let's ask anyone else if they have comments or questions. Is this helpful? Is having this kind of forum even helpful for members of the public? My suggestion was that maybe we wanted to do this again in maybe a month. If after we've been up and running for a month, it might be helpful to see if there's been improvements or, heaven forbid, something else we need to work on. I'm just wondering, are people able to say in the chat thingy or in the Q&A thingy, is this actually a helpful forum?
It is. Now, I think that one of the things that's going to help is, excuse me, is, we're all going to need some communication. It's great that we're having this meeting, but like with everything else, is there a way to see the communications that is going to go out to the staff and who's going to be running this to actually make sure that these things are being done? And I get nothing's going to be perfect. I think we all understand that. We are dealing with teenagers and young youth. I get that. I've already had to have a talk with my son about the language that he's heard, and believe me, it's quite profane. And that's fine. My son, he can handle that. I have no issues with that. But I think we say we're going to try to help these youth to understand where they are, to hopefully be more respectful, Drug paraphernalia being left at a park, that's unacceptable. I understand it's legal and I don't care. That's here nor there. But again, being respectful of where you are. We just want to probably see some communication that actually goes out to the staff for this. Because again, I've heard about curfews and everything else. And again, it's not being enforced because I see it. My door actually my front door faces the front door.
Okay, Mike, thanks for that. It sounds to me like I've seen a couple of people saying that, yes, it would be good to get this get together again. On the issue of security, everyone knows that if we're putting money into security and there's a finite amount of resources in this world, is it better for us to put more money into security versus actually service that are actually helping people to be successful and to so that they're working through some of these issues? But we want to make sure that the residents of the shelter are safe. We want to make sure that the neighborhood is safe. We want to make sure that adjacent properties even farther apart, we obviously want everybody to be safe. And quite often it's the members who are inside the shelter who are most likely to be victimized, who are most likely to have issues when they if there's any kind of issues. But so let's say, I'm just looking for an indication. Would it be helpful to do this again in a month to 6 weeks? Maybe after the playoffs are over? That was a joke. It'll be over for Toronto this week anyway. Sorry, that was a joke. Question
that was not funny.
That was
not funny.
Okay, sorry
about
that.
Was not funny. The Leafs are going to win. I'm sorry.
Sorry, but all right. Can we just go to Janella? Janella had a question. Is the main door locked? Do the residents have a key? Do they have to ring a bell to get in? Let's go to Ruth and Catherine. Is the main door locked?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so they have to buzz in. They get buzzed in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super. It's not a buzz, but staff have to physically unlock it.
Okay, great. Super. So I've heard from maybe 3 or 4 people of the 20 who are on here, 3 or 4 people who think that it might be good to do this again in a month or 2 months. And I'm happy to work with the team here to pull that together if we think it's appropriate. Is there anything else that we need to cover off while we're here? I know this is a funny, odd time of the day, but I know that there are other public meetings in the city of Kingston tonight. And I heard there was a hockey game on tonight. So this 4 o'clock time slot seemed to work quite well. And where somebody asked, Emily asked, where can we get access to this recording from today? So Jen, I'm going to ask you, and I think they go to YouTube, but where can they find this, Jen?
Hi, Emily. Great question. Thank you. Yes, it's being recorded to YouTube and you can check there right after the meeting ends. And that goes for anybody else who may have joined late as well.
Okay, so let's just take a minute. I'm going to go to each of our panel members, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Kiley and for kind of final thoughts and some feedback. So let's go to each of the panel members, and just for some final thoughts, we'll go to Councillor Kiley, and then I'll do a little housekeeping in the end. We will put up the email addresses and the phone numbers for you to we'll put that up right at the end. But why don't we go first to Mitchell Grange at the City of Kingston in the Housing and Social Services Department. Mitchell, any final thoughts on this before we go off?
I just want to say and share a big thank you to everyone for participating in today's call. I mean, it's extremely helpful to hear your thoughts, and from offering donations to valid concerns on the property. We'll certainly do our part and work closely with the youth shelter to address any of those concerns. And as you saw, there's the contact information directly for the youth shelter. And if they feel any of those questions need to be directed more towards the city, we'll work with them closely to address anything that may come up. So thank you for attending today's call.
Great, thank you very much. Let's go to Ruth and then Catherine, then over to Councillor Kiley. Ruth, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just as Mitchell said, I really want to thank everybody so much. Hopefully sometime we'll get to meet in person. Catherine and I will be in and out. We have quite a few sites to look after, but this has been really helpful for me, Bruce and Catherine, to hear. And as mentioned, please feel free to email myself and Catherine at any time. And we'll do our best. Like I said, I'm new to that neighborhood myself, and I can't believe what's around, and the Cataraqui Mall and all of the conveniences that are around. So it's an absolutely lovely area, and we really want to be part of that neighborhood and do our very best. So thank you so much.
Catherine, any final thoughts before we go to the councillor?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank the city for giving us the support and a beautiful building to help us in our need. But I also want to thank the community. So far, really, all our interactions have actually came from a spot of trying to work things out and caring. And ultimately, our goal is to hopefully have all of us mesh nicely. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much for that, Catherine. Councillor Kiley, we very much appreciate you being here and for kind of just listening and hearing from the community and some of the conversation that's going on. And we hope that you can join us again if we're going to do this in a month. And thank you very much for being here. So over to you for some final thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. So I'm going to echo a lot of what was said, that I'm very grateful for those who have participated, both the city staff and the staff of the youth shelter, but particularly to the residents who have come out tonight. And why it means so much to me is because I think this is the best of community, right? People have come with tough questions, but they've done so in a very respectful and very fair way, at least from my estimation. So I think that really bodes well for a continued conversation. And I'm glad to hear that this meeting or something similar to this can happen again in the not so distant future. I also thought I wanted to end on a quick personal anecdote, which is that about 7 or 8 years ago, I was the executive director of another nonprofit downtown, and our address was actually at 230 Brock Street. So we literally shared a wall with the Kingston Youth Shelter when they were in that location. And I won't lie, things weren't perfect, but the ED at that time, like we have the ED in Ruth today, was willing to have the conversation and was open and receptive and made changes as were needed. And I think that because that relationship still exists between the city and the youth shelter, between myself and the youth shelter, and now all of us as the larger neighborhood in the youth shelter, I think that we're in a good place going forward. So thanks to everyone, and I do hope we can do this again.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And just going to put up that final slide with the contact. It's in your chat thingy here, but there is a phone number. Please call us if there are issues that emerge. If you're writing to the youth shelter, it's Ruth at KingstonYouthShelter.com or Catherine, that's Catherine with an E, at KingstonYouthShelter.com. If you have other broader issues about housing issues in the city of Kingston, not just about this youth shelter, but about other issues, by all means, you can write to housing at CItyofKingston.ca. Let me thank everyone for attending today's session and to our panelists for being here. Thank you for that, and to the resource people, and to my technical co-host, Jen Penarski of the City of Kingston. And I know Jen has some follow-up things right to do at the end of the meeting, and thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you again for spending some time with us this afternoon. As Bruce said, we just have a couple of things that to tidy up before we let you go. One of the things that I've launched for you right now is an evaluation poll, and it's specific to the format that we're using, which is online public engagement. So it's not about the conversation that we had. It's specifically to the technology, and I'm definitely using my raise hand that the technology isn't always perfect, and acknowledge that we had a bit of a bumpy start this morning or this afternoon. So please take some time and offer some feedback on how we can improve the online engagement opportunity for you. Just remind everyone that this session was closed captioned and live streamed to YouTube, and it will be available there shortly after this session ends. we have also, you can reach out to the housing team for questions about housing supports in general. And then we included in the chat the contact information for the Kingston Youth Shelter. Please keep an eye on Get Involved Kingston should a future opportunity and a community conversation be made available. So thank you again for your time. We have about half of everybody has completed our evaluation poll. I'll just wait another couple of minutes.
Jen, while we're waiting, can we talk about the hockey game?
No, Bruce, I don't think so. Tough crowd. Oh dear. Oh dear. Might have to add an extra public engagement evaluation poll.
All right. Okay. I'll take off my Habs hat.
So thank you again, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. It's now 5:05 p.m. We're going to wrap up the live stream and end today's webinar. Thank you again, and we hope you enjoy your afternoon in the sunshine.